Imagine living your life after 50 and feeling energized and excited about your future. Welcome to the Women in the Middle podcast, the podcast for women who are ready to figure out what they want and create the life they deserve. Here's your host and master certified life coach, Susie Rosenstein.
Hey there, today's episode is all about 3 ways that time is on your side in midlife. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast Women in the Middle with over 1 million downloads and counting. I'm your host, Susie Rosenstein, your master certified coach and midlife clarity expert, and I am so glad to be here with you again. Now, today, I want to share a few ideas with you that have been quite useful for women in my community. It's about the way you think about time in midlife. There's a way to believe and talk about time that can help you. And there's a way to think and believe things about time that just won't help you. So we want to get at how can we be more creative about thinking through what's possible for you. Today we're going to play with this concept and see what comes up at your end. And I think that sounds pretty good because it is pretty powerful stuff. But just quick, there are 2 things I really want to share with you. First, I want to make sure you know about how you can stop wasting valuable time feeling stuck and do something about it. It is so frustrating when you know you meant for more, but you're just spinning and wondering, when is something going to change? That was me, so I totally get this. Here's the thing though, I can help you get unstuck, but you can't just sit there waiting for something amazing to happen in your life. You have to do something. This is exactly why I created the Women in the Middle Academy, to help you get unstuck and excited about your life again. When we work together in the Women in the Middle Academy, you will learn how to create a roadmap to a meaningful, regret-free next chapter, and you will have fun doing it. So, if you're ready to change your life and learn the skills to unstick yourself with some masterful coaching, a top-notch curriculum, an infusion of creativity, and a warm, fun, and awesome community of like-minded women, let's talk about it. I would love to be able to help you get unstuck and happier than ever before. So go ahead and book your momentum call at www.womeninthemiddleacademy.com, and we will chat. And one more update, if you haven't checked out my new podcast yet, Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs, please do. We're having a lot of fun over there and sharing a ton of good stuff about the reality of running a business when you're a woman over 50. I would greatly appreciate your support too if you could share it with your friends and colleagues you know would enjoy it. So if you know, whoops, I'm knocking things over on my desk here. If you know somebody who's an entrepreneur or somebody that you think would really appreciate hearing these kinds of stories, please share. It's on iTunes and all the podcast places, including Spotify and your favorite podcast apps. It's also on my website at susierosenstein.com under the podcast tab. All right, now let's dive into today's topic, which is about time. And it's about time we talked about this because time just may be freaking you out a little bit. So we're going to talk about a way to think about time that's useful in midlife. A lot of the time can feel stressful, like you're running out of time and everything that you make it mean, which is basically that you're going to die too soon. Too soon to do this or that, too soon to create memories, too soon to work on relationships, too soon to live your best life. So, what I want to coach you on today is your mindset around time and how you can flip the script, so to speak. We're going to flip the script. What I'm sharing today is a bit of a different take on it. So here it is. You might need to sit down for this one. I don't know, if you're outside walking the dog or something, you might just have to sit on the curb or find a stump or something in the woods. What if time was on your side? So just pause on that for a second. What if time at this age was on your side? What if time wasn't the big, negative, scary clock that's ticking away, making you feel all scarce, panicky, and old? What if you could use time for good? Now we're talking, right? Time for good. So think about your life and notice how your experience of time has been lately. There are some pretty big triggers about time that you may have experienced. Maybe you turned 50 or 60 and it was a bit unsettling. Or maybe you experienced a super surprising milestone, like a high school reunion or an anniversary. An old high school friend of mine just posted last week that we graduated from high school 43 years ago. And I have to say, that was jarring. I stopped the scroll in Facebook when I saw that. My 30th wedding anniversary is coming up this year, and wow, that's also a big number that makes me pause. Maybe it's someone else's birthday that threw you for a sec, like one of your kids turning what feels like a big one. My oldest is turning 29, and I'm definitely feeling it. Or even when your parent celebrates their 80th, for example. Notable emotional milestones, I think. Then there's becoming a grandmother for the first time, or watching your friends retire all over the place, or perhaps you're the one retiring and it's wreaking a lot of havoc up there in your brain. So you can see the way you interpret these events is completely subjective. Ask 10 midlife gals and you'll likely get a variety of responses. But what matters is your personal interpretation. When you interpret these kinds of events, your interpretation is probably showing you what you believe and or think about aging and about time. And as a listener of this podcast, you also know that your thinking is optional. If you don't like the reasons you think a certain way, you can make some changes. Increasing your awareness of what you think is so important to your life because your thinking creates your emotional state. So if you're bumming out, you're thinking something that is bringing you down. And as much as we love to celebrate, when left to our own autopilot thinking, we can create an emotional reality for ourselves that's just not useful, and it may not be fun. This is why I think we should flip the script when it comes to mindfulness around time and the passage of time. So, my amazing woman in the middle, here are 3 ways that time is on your side in midlife. Okay, number 1, regret-proofing wake-up call. In midlife, it can be a blessing to get a wake-up call. And when it comes to the mindset around time, your mindset around time, I like to think of it as a regret-proofing wake-up call to stop waiting and start creating your life. Now, I've been using this phrase regret-proofing your life to describe becoming intentional about what you're going to do, what you're going to say, what you're going to create in your life so that you don't have regrets. When you experience one of these jarring time-related wake-up calls, like a big shot of awareness that you are however old you are and whatever you're making that mean, it's also a big reminder that you have the power to create the life that you're living, right? You don't need to wait. You can create. Now, this idea seems obvious, but the reality is that it's common to adopt the lifestyle approach of waiting to be asked to participate, waiting to be offered an opportunity, waiting for something exciting to happen. Can you relate to this? I've heard it so much in my community and people sending me emails from the podcast. Regret-proofing means being intentional now and making shit happen. So it means that you start thinking about and acknowledging what you want and then doing something about it. That's the other part of it. You know, acknowledge what you want and then do something about it. It means taking responsibility for the life that you're living. This can mean lots of things for you depending on how much work you've already done in this area. But regardless, I love a good wake-up call like this because it's a jolt. It's a jolt that can move you more in the direction of pulling up your big girl panties and taking full responsibility for living your best life. Okay, another way that time is on your side in midlife is number 2, present moment reminder. Now, this whole idea of living in the present moment is something so many of us say, but are surprised at how difficult it can be. Being in the present moment is about connecting to the now. You're focusing on what you're doing, where you are, what's happening, that sort of thing. You're not multitasking. You're not letting your mind wander all over the place. And you're not thinking about a whole bunch of things. You are not thinking about the past and you're not thinking about the future. You are really focusing on being and experiencing what's happening in the present moment. Now, getting better at this skill is related to your well-being. I don't know exactly what you're thinking about right now as you're listening, but I know that personally, this is a challenge. Just notice how focused you can be about your phone and your notifications. Like just your phone and notifications and the way that you're thinking about eating dinner or walking the dog or driving or, I don't know, just whatever's in your purse when you're shopping or when you're in the grocery store. There are so many things that you could be doing and times that you're doing them that you are aware of your phone. You're not completely disconnected. Or the way we kind of embrace inviting distractions in and are resistant to setting ourselves up for greater focus. Like even think about your bedtime routine. I know some people are really good about putting their phone in another room or turning it off or something like that, but so many of us are not. So that's just one example. I see this also with wanting to watch TV while I'm eating lunch, for example, or preferring an audiobook over a regular book because I can multitask. So do you sit and eat quietly, just eating and focusing on, the taste of your food, chewing, hydrating yourself, how delicious it is, like any of those things? Or are you also watching TV or listening to a podcast or reading a magazine? Really think about it. I have so many women in my community tell me that it's hard to read a book. It's hard to sit down and read a book like we used to. And what about the way you love listening to podcasts? And thank you for loving podcasts and loving this podcast. But what about the way you love listening while you're walking the dog rather than just walking the dog? It's another example. And these are just quickies, right? But it's not so easy for us to connect to the present moment these days in so many ways. So just that concept alone, you might find yourself thinking about it a little bit. That's one thing. In the shower, I'm not really doing anything other than being in the shower. I do work on stretching a bit while I'm in the shower, and I love my soap. Oh my gosh, I have this amazing soap that I just take my time and I just love it so much. But the shower is a good period of time for me to just focus on what I'm doing and be in the present moment. So think about what's happening for you and think about your urge for not wanting to be in the present moment. So like I said, these are just quick examples, but it is one of the reasons I teach mindful doodling in the Women in the Middle Academy. It's fun to watch this urge to complete a simple doodle versus slowing down and being in the present moment and drawing a structured pattern of small circles, for example, right? So when you slow down, you can really focus on the orb that you're drawing, the circle, the curve, trying to get them to be the same size, trying to get the line to, hook up at the other end of the circle. But when you're rushing, or you have this urge to complete what you're doing, you are no longer in the present moment. You'd rather be there than luxuriate in taking the time to do what you're doing and being here. And another time that this was pointed out to me was by the author of the book, The Practicing Mind, Tom Sterner. I was in a book study with him, and I've talked about this on other podcast episodes, but we had to pick one thing and work on doing one thing and improve our skill in being present while we're doing the thing. So I picked doing push-ups, doing 10 push-ups a day. And after a couple of days, I got much better at doing the push-up, but I started to get very judgmental about the quality of my push-up and the quality of my goal in this group that I only picked 10. I was very judgy about the whole thing. And he pointed out to me that when you are in self-judgment, you are not in the present moment. So just in a few minutes, we just talked about lots of ways that you're not in the present moment and why it can be a struggle. Now, I do have a quote from Tom Sterner. He said, from that book, The Practicing Mind, which I highly recommend, "The only way to truly enjoy life is to be fully present in each moment." Now, what he's getting at is that so many of us are all over the place, like we've just been talking about. Think about how much you dwell in the past or are excited about the future. Maybe your vacation plans or finishing a large project or finishing a doodle or finishing a book. The idea is that when you do this, as we all do, there's a cost. You end up missing out on the beauty of what you have in the present moment. When you focus on the present moment, you can go deeper. You can notice more. You can look for small joys. You can experience big joys. You can connect with yourself, perhaps in a very different way than the way you do normally. This is part of really engaging with the present moment and you in it. This is how you can live your best life. It's not just climbing Kilimanjaro or whatever you might have on your list. For me, it's the Galapagos. It's not just doing that. I have a friend who did climb Mount Kilimanjaro this week, and she was posting on Facebook. And as much as I enjoyed watching it, it's not something I really want to do at all. But I love that she did it. She's in her 50s. So this approach to enjoy the now more allows you to notice more, find more meaning, have more contentment and gratitude, which can enrich your well-being and overall happiness. So that is the second way. The third way that time is on your side is the next best step strategy. Now, when you allow yourself to be open to what I like to call the next best step strategy for your future, you make it easier to see very clearly that time is on your side. So here's what I mean. Actually, this has come up a lot lately in the Women in the Middle Academy and also in the podcast club, and was the inspiration for this episode about flipping the script on time. It should be no surprise that these midlife gals are just like you. They're amazing, bright, capable, often overachievers, and, they have a love of planners and huge lists of things to do. I'm assuming you do too. And when there's a midlife transition, there's a jolt to the way life has been for a while now. Perhaps it's empty nest time, or there's been a corporate layoff, or an upcoming retirement, just to name a few examples. These transitions have one familiar and busy lifestyle on one side, and more of an open, empty space on the other. So the open space can be both exciting and scary. It's going from a highly scheduled routine to an uncertain routine. It's going from what you knew to what you don't know. It's going from having a high level of skill to perhaps being a beginner in something. It's going from someone else's priorities to you acting on your own priorities. Now, at first glance, you might be wondering, well, if it's about my priorities, why would it be scary? Isn't that a good thing? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. It is complicated. But what I see the main issue to be has to do with your perception of time, because you may not be connected to your priorities, what you really want. So figuring that out is the first thing. And then your perception of productivity can get in the way, because figuring it out may not feel productive at all. And you may be quite uncomfortable with that, right? It might feel like it's just taken too long, and that doesn't feel productive. So for today's episode, we're not going to focus too much on productivity, but you might enjoy episode 250 called Self-Care and Productivity Are Better Together in Midlife. You might like that one. But it's the time thing that has me fascinated. Not only are you hard on yourself for the time it takes to figure out your priorities, your passion, your purpose for your next chapter, but it's also the way you tend to think about the task at hand. Here's what I mean. Think about the last time you made a big life plan. Probably in your late 20s, early 30s or so, right? You thought about education, maybe finding a partner, what kind of lifestyle you wanted, perhaps establishing your career, raising a family or not, where you wanted to live, maybe buying a home. All those kind of bigger, higher level issues that take time. These are common long-term goals. And what's common now is for you to adopt this expectation that you should be developing long-term goals now for your next chapter. Right? You developed them then, and you just autopilot go into thinking, oh yeah, that's what I have to do now. My friend, no wonder this can get scary and stressful. You don't have to think about your next chapter having to have long-term goals in the same way. I am giving you permission to release this expectation and play with this new way to think about time. What if the best strategy for your next chapter was to focus on your next best step when it comes to figuring out what you want? The next best step can be part of the discovery plan. Here's the thing. How is it even possible to make decisions about stuff when you don't have new data? And there's no certainty in life anyway. So you need the new data. You have to get out of your house and away from Google on a screen and start doing things. You got to talk to new people. You have to embrace being a beginner and being uncomfortable. Then you can assess, interpret, and take the next best step. See what I mean? By focusing on a big amount of time, like the next 10 or 20 years, and not a small amount of time to just take the next best step and try something, you're making it harder and not based on being present, focused, and connected. So I think this next best step strategy is a very good thing. So that's what I have for you today. 3 ways to flip the script and embrace time being on your side in midlife. Number 1, regret-proofing wake-up call. Number 2, present moment reminder. And number 3, the next best step strategy. And if you need help with these ideas and other mindfulness strategies to get out of your own way so that you can sail into your next chapter, I'm your gal. It is way more fun to do this together. That's it for this episode. Now, as you know, this podcast is all about how to love your life again after 50. It's really all about coaching you to be more intentional and to incorporate mindfulness into your life as a regular practice. This is how you put yourself on your agenda. So my focus as your midlife coach is to help you get unstuck, clear, and focused on your current values and priorities so that you don't have regrets. I can help you create the freedom and meaning you're looking for. I would love to be able to help you get unstuck and be happier and more fulfilled than ever before. So go ahead and book your momentum call at www.womeninthemiddleacademy.com and we will chat. You're also invited to purchase my new masterclass, Get Unstuck, Midlife Clarity Fast and Easy, where you can get clear about your next chapter priorities without spin, confusion, and overwhelm in less than an hour. Head over to www.midliferoadmap.com. And finally, for show notes and links, head over to www.susierosenstein.com and click the podcast tab and look for episode 362. You'll also see links there for the new show, Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs. Thanks so much for listening. It's time for you to put yourself first, one thought at a time. I'm Susie Rosenstein, and I'll talk to you next week.